The past few years has seen an incredible amount of news coverage, especially compared to previous years, given to the issues of police brutality, racism in police departments, those sorts of issues. High-profile killings of unarmed black individuals, especially teenagers, has received a lot of coverage. At the same time, some of the organizations, the activist organizations like Black Lives Matter, that have been driving a lot of that renewed focus by putting out policy platforms and getting on the news, staging protests.
And riots. Oh, no, he didn't say riots, did he?
Going for and against candidates, that sort of thing, have received a ton of criticism, usually by the right-wing media, especially online.
Oh yeah, these weird, crazy right-wing media sources that are against protest, peaceful protest, really not riots. They're totally not against riots. They're against black people. Yeah, that's the narrative we're trying to push. Come on, guys, give me a am I right? Yeah, can I get an am I right?
Now, we were talking on Wednesday, Cenk Uygur and myself, about how as much criticism as they get and how BLM is pitched as encouraging cops to be murdered and that sort of thing.
We don't want justice or peace anymore. We done with that shit. We want blood like y'all want. We want blood. We want the same shit y'all want. Eye for eye. No more peace. Fuck all that. Ain't no more peace. Ain't no more peace. And I promise you, if they go about their burden of whatever they said you're doing, you pull your pussy out and you fucking bust at it. You pull your pussy out and you bust at it. Because at the end of the day, it's gonna be you against them. And when we move with the Panthers, trust me, when you see me move, I'm moving in violence.
Now stop clapping. Stop clapping. Stop clapping, because most of y'all folks ain't involved. Real talk.
We're tired of walking around here asking y'all to help us.
No more asking.
We need action.
Why the fuck you take action? I don't give a fuck whether you knock them over,
Whether you run up on them, whatever you do, you better fucking take action. I might fucking dance.
It's obvious that they have had a positive overall impact when you look at popular opinion about police brutality, about racism in police departments, and how those things have changed. And we've got some polling data for you today that should provide some hope for the future, because this has to do with people who are between 18 and 30 years old, and it looks like they largely understand what's actually going on. About 3/4 of young Americans say they think the police treat some groups of people differently. That includes 9 in 10 African Americans, more than 8 in 10 Asian Americans and Hispanics, and more than 6 in 10 whites.
I'm going to go out on a very sturdy limb here and say 9 in 10 African Americans believe that they are wrongly treated by the police because they are told that they are wrongly treated by the police. They are told to expect to be wrongly treated by the police. Okay, it's not racism in the police, okay? 9 out of 10 cops are not racist. I'm going to tell you that much right now.
Obviously some difference between the different racial groups there, but the majority, a pretty good majority, even amongst whites who are young, understand that the police systematically treat some people worse than others.
And that 1 in 10 African American who doesn't think so? Larry Elder.
Jesus, the cringe. Holy crap. These guys laugh so hard at that. Why? Doesn't make any sense.
He goes to every poll.
He just gets pulled all the time. He's like a professional, yeah. Let's see. So in terms of who is it that's actually getting mistreated, 9 in 10 say African Americans are especially likely to be mistreated, with little variation along racial and ethnic lines. So African Americans think African Americans are being mistreated, but even whites as well think it the same. About 3/4 think Latinos are especially likely to be mistreated, again, including nearly 9 in 10 Hispanics, almost 8 in 10 whites, and 7 in 10 African Americans. So there's an understanding out there amongst young people that now that there's been years and years of the body cam footage, you've seen the people being killed in cities around the country, you've seen the lawsuits attempting to take down some of these police officers and being unable to do so. And that is not being missed. People are not so distracted by Snapchat and Instagram that they're not understanding that this is changing. And a lot of that is due to the media being willing to cover these sorts of stories, but it's also
due to misleading information from organizations like yours.
Due to groups like BLM who are making sure that the media does cover it.
Much of what I've seen the media cover of Black Lives Matter, give or take MSNBC or CNN, the people who are for the racial split that we are having right now due to Black Lives Matter. I've seen people cover the riots a lot more than the good things Black Lives Matter have done. You know, I'm sure the riot list is a lot longer than the good things, okay?
Now, outside of racial groups, 2/3 think poor people and immigrants are more likely to face mistreatment. So they understand that there is also a class element to this as well. And I don't think that they've missed a lot of the rhetoric about immigrants over the past couple of years, especially coming out of Donald Trump.
Oh, you gotta take shots at Donald Trump even when they're false accusations, okay? Donald Trump's family is immigrants. I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know. Everyone in America, unless you're Native American or, you know, your family crossed the land bridge from Asia. Your family's an immigrant, right? There's a difference between immigrants and illegal immigrants, you know, undocumented immigrants, as you like to call them. I like to call them illegal aliens. Does that get under your skin, huh, Mr. Regressive? Does that get under your skin that I call them illegal aliens?
Now, in terms of the personal experience that people have had, look at the difference between racial groups here. So 24% of young African Americans and 16% of Latinos, but just 8% of whites and 4% of Asian Americans say they've personally experienced harassment or violence by the police. So 24%, so 3 times as many, or 3 times as likely, that African Americans will have personally experienced violence or harassment, which obviously means that when you've experienced that, or when someone you know in your family or one of your close friends has experienced it, and the number is more than twice as big for that category, that of course you're going to understand it in a different way. And I think that because there's less personal experience of this sort of harassment and violence amongst whites and Asian Americans, it's all the more important that the media does cover it to help fill in the gaps that life experience aren't providing for them.
You know, or maybe it's like when a black person is shot by a white cop or a black person is shot by a black cop, like in Milwaukee. We always have these people that are saying, oh, they didn't do anything. The didn't do's. We have the didn't do's, okay? The people that say, oh, we didn't do anything. I was wrong. That was wrong. When it turned out they were carrying a gun, an illegal gun. They pointed a gun at a cop. They ended up hitting the cop. They slammed his head into the concrete. You know, all of this information comes out, and it's just, it gets ignored by the didn't do's. The people who didn't do nothing. It's ridiculous that this guy is using this as evidence. Wow.
There's some other info as well. About 3/4 of young whites and half of young Latinos and Asian Americans say they always or often trust the police to do what's right, while only about 1/4 of young African Americans say the same. And that is perhaps the bad thing there. Is that 3/4 of young whites still believe that, lumping always and often
both are surprising. That as many as 25% of African Americans
still believe it.
Still believe that is amazing.
To see that 25% of black Americans think that cops are still there to protect them is insane. I cannot believe they would have that idea.
Like, dude, seriously? Seriously. Maybe some people aren't entitled to the point where they say, oh, anything that happens to me means I was wronged, you know. I wasn't in the wrong. I was wronged. That is 95% of the youth in America today. Anyone from the age of freaking 8 to 25 nowadays is entitled. Anything that happened to them is somebody else's fault. How about you understand this? You, in this category, you're supposed to understand what's happening. You obviously don't, okay? You don't understand what's happening, and you're throwing your bull crap agenda out there.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people definitely, they know what's going on around the country, but then they might have a different view of the police in their small town or something like that. The way people judge Congress, but like their congressmen.
Right.
A lot of people are like, oh yeah, in these cities, the cops are out of control, but I've never had a problem with my cop. I see him, at the deli or whatever. So that might be driving some of it. And while these numbers still have a ways to go in certain areas, it is good to know that there's an understanding of the problems. As these people become a bigger and bigger portion of the country, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to get the systematic sort of change that we need in police departments around the country.
Yeah,
maybe that's what you think.
Yes, and I think you talked a couple of things you said, John. I mean, first of all, it's media and it's groups like BLM, but it's social media. I think all of this is social media. I think that's the difference. And when you talk to people who were in the civil rights movement in the 1960s,
do not compare this bullcrap pseudo-revolution that we are having today to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Are you actually retarded? You're going to compare a bunch of entitled pricks and white self-haters to the civil rights movement of 1960, where people were actually getting crosses burned in their yards, where people were actually getting shot at for being black, for people were getting attacked for their race, to this situation where people felt they were treated wrongly when they pointed a gun at a cop.
They say as soon as pictures went out, as soon as you saw a billy club on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, those went all over the country. We saw the dogs, you know, in the water cannons, and you saw Bull Connor, and you saw them. Then at that point, people around the world started saying, what God's name is going on in America in the South? And that's when change started to happen. So yeah, now you have social media, and you have these groups like Black Lives Matter sending pictures, sending firsthand accounts, live tweeting rallies and events, and you know, things that we've seen in politics all year happen constantly every time there's an event that needs, you know, Milwaukee recently, Dallas, everything. And so that had a lot to do with it. I think these numbers are going to go even more. I am really surprised by that last slide, the one that showed 75 and 25. Because I can't believe still 75% of white people think that. I'm also surprised by the fact that 8% in one of your slides, 8% of white people versus 4% of Asians have been harassed or
yeah, that's true. That is still high.
Violence. That's still, you know, that
you think 8%? I would think it would be higher.
I would think it would be higher, but I would think that they would not be in front of Asians. I think that in keeping with what I mean, that's just
according to Steve O.
Me thinking.
According to Steve O, who's Asian,
right. He's Asian.
He said he feels like he has gotten a pass.
Yeah,
in his life because he's Asian. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Like I think Asians are they're.
Look at any kind of crime statistic. Asians are way under what you would expect them to be. So, you know, cops tend to be more harassing to minorities, who are the ones that are more likely to commit crimes. Now, black people are more likely to commit murder at 50% of the time, and that shows in how many cops are put in those kind of areas, those rundown areas where crime happens a lot more. You don't expect to see a bunch of Asian people go out there and, I mean, sure, there's Asian gangs, but it's not like every road you turn down there's some Asian dude selling you crack cocaine or stabbing some dude in a back alley. It's just, you expect those to be higher members of your society. I know that's kind of, it's stereotyping, and some stereotypes are true, as in, look how far Japan has come. And that has to do with their values and how far they push each other. You know, they don't make excuses for each other, even when they know they're in the wrong. It's more of they're pushing each other by being competitive. I know that's stereotyping, but some stereotypes are really true.
They're put almost like in a better category, right? Like I think cops,
the model minority, which obviously has negative aspects to it as well. There's discrimination that comes along with that, but some of it is a belief that there's less criminality.
I find it, I think it's interesting.
How about you pull up some crime stats, dude? They are not pictured as being less criminal. They are less criminal. Look at the statistics. What are they, like 6-7% of the population? It may be 8% of the population. They are like less than 1% of the murder, dude. It's crazy.
And then I'm sure the experience, every single black friend I have, black acquaintance, black colleague, every single one, without missing one, has experienced harassment from the police. Yeah. I don't know any of my white friends who ever have. Honestly, I can't. I mean, you know, maybe Jimmy, but that's it.
Yeah. Does my dad count?
Yeah, I was going to say that's why he didn't let me get to it because his father was a cop.
Yeah.
But so the experience that people, you know, have in this country. John Edwards, rest his soul, when he was a candidate, said there are two Americas, right? And there are two Americas across the board, and that's what social media and that's what these things are showing us. But at least people like acknowledge his power. People are starting to say that's true and feeling it, and that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I dressed like, I'm just going to say, I dressed like a wigger in high school. I wore FUBU and Tommy Hilfiger and stuff like that. That's because that's the culture. But despite that, despite being kind of a delinquent, I was never harassed or anything like that. But I have friends who,
so you
in a
dressed
year,
like that because everyone was.
Basically, what he's saying is he dressed like a complete and utter douchebag in high school. He was trying to be cool. He was trying to fit in. He was trying to act black. You know, now he's trying to take up for black people, be their savior, hold them in his hands. You know, just like, oh, you're too weak, so I'm gonna hold you on my own. That's his mentality. It's a racist mentality. I don't have that mentality. he's a racist, but he was trying to be a black person in high school, and he's like, oh man, I feel left out because I didn't get harassed. Why didn't I get harassed? I dressed like you. Come on now, harass me. I wanna have an excuse. Oh my gosh, he was a douchebag. Basically, is what he was. Yeah, I think I'm done with this video. I just had to get one out. But Jesus Christ, guys, these people just make me want to put a bullet in my brain.